Time to bring in Mr. Pat Nevin. Evening.
Good evening, Joe. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. A lot has happened in the past week. Been a busy week in football. You had a whole host of Champions League games and different games that you were going to be working on. I know you were at Stamford Bridge yesterday, so you've had a decent week. What caught your eye?
Well, it's kind of, when you go to the Manchester United Chelsea games, you can't ignore it because the tension, the build-up to it was incredible. And obviously all the stories that are around United at the moment. So it was intriguing to see how they were going to play. And that was jumping out. So when we side thing, which we'll get onto in a little while, that old debate about when you should just, hoof it or, play out from the back. And, I'm a big fan of your play out for the back. Sometimes it will go wrong. But this weekend, there was a few playing out for the back and they got away with it. And they were so lucky. You're taking chances from the back. And it's interesting because I will continually say, yeah, you got to keep on playing. You got to keep on taking chances. But number one, Jorginho probably should have hoofed it when the ball came to him. Norwich they nearly lost the only point that they had by trying to overplay it out from the back. And similarly, Brighton playing out for the back after they'd done so well, they nearly get done as well. And it's one of those things where when you play it out and you're going to be brave on the ball, better get it right.
Yeah.
So this is a bit odd. But the odd thing about it, I still want them to do it. And even though Jorginho, and most people will have seen it, he tried to control the ball when, big old-fashioned centre-half just goes and heads it away. Do you know what? I still want them to keep controlling the ball. I still want it because they'll do it 999 times in a row. It'll be fine. And they'll get goals out of that because they can keep the ball and control the ball. I can see, I was all around me, the Chelsea fans, when they were on it. Every head was in every set of hands around me when that happened. But I tell you what bravery for that guy to go and stand up and take a penalty. At that point in time, I was very impressed with that by Jorginho because that could have got to a lot of people.
Yeah. Tuchel put it down to the floodlights, actually. He was heavily disturbed from the lights, so he didn't see the ball, was Thomas Tuchel. I don't know to what extent you were blinded by lights.
It actually can happen, and of course the lights are lower these days than they used to be. The big old-fashioned ones used to have high up. They're a bit lower now. But it's the same for everyone. Every centre-half that has to get a ball, it will come through the lights. But, it was a bad control. To be fair, that may have happened, but it's still not an excuse. You can see the flight of the ball before it goes into the lights. You should be able to cope with it. And Jorginho will know himself that he should have been able to cope with it. But, it happens now and again. Chelsea have done that. It was one time when Conte got caught in the same position. It was at Arsenal. I think it was last season. Done again, your last man. But you take these chances, you leave a small guy, or in Jorginho's case, quite a slow guy at the back. You're taking some chance with some, because that was never the case, was it? You'd leave 2 back or 3 back, or, certainly your best marker back or one of your quickest ones. It's a little bit of a surprise that someone like Jorginho, who's okay at tackling, but not the best, and certainly not the quickest. And when you see Rashford and Sancho running towards him, you think, well, he's not going to catch them. But, you can't complain too much because, he's done it so often, Tuchel, it's worked 99 times out of 100, as I say, or even more than that.
So, you'd be at the stadium, you'd have a better sense. Was Jorginho generally last man back for set pieces like that?
Yes, it's happened quite a few times. Yeah. They mix it about a bit. But remember, everyone says, it's, Jorginho. And this isn't just a Chelsea chat. This is just a general thing about a lot of teams now. They're sending all their centre-backs up. They're sending everybody that can go and attack the ball up for these corner kicks. And that sounds a bit dangerous, but have a look at the percentages. And Mourinho was always the one that used to talk about this. It doesn't matter if it's a mistake once. Look at the numbers. Look at how many goals Chelsea have scored from centre-backs from corner kicks this season. Loads of them. Absolutely loads of them, So they think, right, okay, once or twice a season it might not work for you. But if you get 10, 11, 12 goals of the season, then it's probably worth doing.
This game was tough going. I must admit I had a busy weekend and I watched the first half, and this game did its very best to send me to sleep. It was just, it had the feel this is not going to be a good game. Manchester United are going to be defensive, and it sort of played out that way. In the end, 66% possession, Chelsea, 24 attempts to Manchester United's 3. They were 2.54 goals on the XG to Chelsea's 8-2, if you're into that kind of thing. And even the Manchester United goal was damning, because United tried to play the ball out of their own half, lost it badly, and Rashford made that tackle, and he was booked for the tackle, and then Chelsea put in the free kick and it's hoofed long, and that's where the Jorginho mistake comes from. So really, this was a Manchester United team just living off crumbs. I don't know if it felt any different to you.
I was really quite surprised at how ultra defensive they were. The body language, I thought, in the first half for a lot of the players was terrible. When I was doing the co-coms on it, I mean, looking at Bruno Fernandes, and I'm thinking, remember as a guy who used to play, attacking midfield for them? He looked just like that guy, Bruno Fernandes, except he could play. Honestly, he just doesn't look like the same player. Absolutely shorn of any belief.
Remember the one he whacked across his own penalty area?
Oh, unbelievable. I mean, it's even Rashford, his body language in the first half, it looked as if he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I've watched Rashford do that before last season when he was carrying an injury, particularly game down at Palace I was at. And you look at him and you think, I want to talk to you, mate. I want to find out what's wrong. Because that's not you. The joyousness seems to have been stripped away from it. Now, it may well be a number of things. I mean, lots of people will jump to the conclusion it's because he's spending too much time doing other things which are important, and we applaud him for massively. But I don't know if it's that. It's maybe all the pressures of everything seem to be on his shoulders. He got a little bit better in the second half, and was a little bit more joie de vivre about his game. But you look through that whole team, and the other thing that was quite surprising, I mean, this is going to sound horribly damning United, and I look forward to the tweets. But they're rolling about, and every time they're tackled, not every time, but a lot of the players, Fred must have been down 3 or 4 times, rolling about as if, he should be carried off. And then 10 seconds later, he's up running about. You think, it's kind of not Man United. And I just hope in the future, because, Manchester United have got a DNA in there somewhere. The point is, it's not working at the moment. It's been removed for a while. But the DNA should still be at that club. And that club is an attacking club. That club is a club that's confident. That club is one that believes in itself and it believes in its own ability. And there was just none of it. And they looked shorn of anything. And it was a fluke. Absolute fluke they got that goal. I mean, I'd said, again in co-coms, a couple of their sort of early balls up, they honestly should have been at Twickenham. And then I watched that one, and that really should have been at Twickenham, the one that they got the goal from. And oddly enough, if my limited knowledge of rugby, I went to my first rugby game 2 weeks ago. But if you do a good kick and it's behind the player and, they can't read it, I mean, they're egg-shaped, so it's a wee bit harder to do it with them. But it was a rugby kick. That's what it was. Yeah. And that's what troubled them. But that shouldn't be Manchester United. The one thing I would say, look, they didn't have Cavani there. Obviously Ronaldo was on the bench. You can't play Ronaldo and Bruno in the same team. I really don't think you can. Away from home against the top team, I think you get destroyed if you play them both, because there's just not enough energy levels between them at the moment. And everyone else starts thinking, well, wait a minute, I'm doing all their running. But, if you've got Cavani out, you've got Varane out, you've got basically 3 of their back 4 were out of that game. So there was no confidence, a limited confidence anyway. But you stick that and Pogba on top of it, you can kind of sort of accept it. So when a new guy comes in, Ralphie comes in, you never know, he might get a few of them back all at the same time, and suddenly, without having to be an utter genius, he might get a lot better if he gets everyone available.
Well, so Ralphie, excited to join. It's a squad full of talent, great mix of youth and experience. I'm hoping that we can fulfil their potential individually and most importantly as a team, was his statement today as he was confirmed. This is such an interesting appointment for a few different reasons. One, he's going to be a consultant afterwards. So if I'm Darren Fletcher or John Murtagh, I would like some more details on his consultancy role, because it sounds awfully familiar to my role. That's one thing. 2, I suspect Rangnick is coming to try and get the job on a permanent basis, and he'll back himself to do well over the next couple of months. The fixture list is very kind to him now. He has a soft landing here. But this is such an interesting appointment, because Rangnick stands for everything which goes against what Manchester United are at the moment. I mean, there were theories as to whether or not he'd pick the team yesterday, but you think of the Rudiger chance and it's Ronaldo not bothering to go with the runner. Now, if Rangnick is even a tenth of what we're reading about Rangnick, that's just going to be a veto on Ronaldo. Like, he just can't have that in his team. So Manchester United, I presume, and that could be a dangerous thing to do, are very aware of this. So what kind of world war have they unleashed here between Rangnick and about 4 of these Manchester United heavyweights?
I hope a serious one, a real world war.
But it will be, won't it?
Because I honestly, I'm very old school about this. I don't care about the name. I've never cared about the name. If you're a player and a pro player and a pro player at the top level, you shouldn't care about the names you're playing with or against. It's who's doing well. And the managers, the top managers, don't care about that. I had a laugh at the weekend. A show was doing Fighting Talk. I was saying the player I never quite got the way everyone else did was Beckham, because, for a variety of reasons. But he was undroppable for England. No one should be undroppable. Absolutely. Doesn't matter if you're Pogba, Beckham, Varane, you name it, Ronaldo. Doesn't matter. If you're not doing the job, you don't get picked. And you won't look at somebody like Klopp, and he'll leave them out. You look at absolute Pep. He doesn't give a stuff who you are. You could be the best player in the world, but if you could be the guy that thinks the team's ticking. But if you're not doing it for a week or 2 weeks maximum, you're out. And to be honest, the main man at that is Tuchel at the moment. He doesn't care. And
could I interject for a second? I totally accept that, and I totally subscribe to what you're saying in theory. Isn't the fear in reality, if you're a coach, especially if you're not going to win straight away, that the dressing room can turn a bit toxic, that these big names are looming presences, and fans can say, well, he's not even playing Ronaldo. Roy Keane even kind of headed in that direction post-match. So I get it when you're in a position of Pep power. How can you question Pep? How can you question Tuchel? They can drop it they want. New man Rangnick in, you're gone in 6 months, mate. Pff, good luck dropping me.
I'll tell you what, Rangnick, so what? I'm not going to be there in 6 months. I'm going to be doing a different job. I might as well do it my way. I honestly think, for everything I've heard about him, a lot of it, I'll be honest with you, is recently learned about him. But there's no point in him coming in and kind of massaging egos for too long. He might try them for a wee while to see what he can get out of them. But if he can't get any more out of players of a certain age or a certain self-belief that they're not fulfilling, I'm really convinced he'll say, no, sod that. You're out. I'm really, really confident. And I think United know that. They accept that. And maybe Ollie didn't have the opportunity to do that. Certainly there was a time when he did try and drop Ronaldo there and use him as the impact player. I've said that quite a few times already. Do you think in certain games, particularly against the high-intensity teams, which, to be fair, is beginning to be most of the teams at the moment, he probably is better as an impact player second half. But whether you can get that out of him. And he came on, to be honest, he didn't have any impact when he came on, so you're going to have to get inside his head. But I looked at the stats in the Champions League for a number of years, and again, I think I've said it to you before, the two players that were running least in the Champions League for the last 3, 4, 5 years were Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. But they could do that because they were the main man in the team. And, the rest of the team covered for them. I just don't think you can do that every week. And certainly Manchester United aren't a group of players that can do that for them just now. So, we'll see what he can get. I'm intrigued. I'd love, more than anything else, if he could get the best out of Ronaldo and understood the times when he could get the best out of Ronaldo. But this whole idea of thinking, I'll turn big names against me, you know what? If you come in with that attitude, you've no chance, mate.
Yeah.
You have absolutely no chance.
Well, it's going to be interesting. Again, I don't know if the powers that be at Manchester United have orchestrated this whole thing by accident or design, but they've set up a beautiful drama. That's all I can say. One last one, and this is a difficult one for you to answer, but I'm going to throw it out there and get your thoughts. Rangnick's here for the next 6-7 months. Jamie Carragher made an interesting observation over the weekend. He said, if you remember Jurgen Klopp's first 6 months at Liverpool, as he tried to up the intensity requirements, there were a lot of injuries as players tried to cope with the extra load, and Carragher was saying United could be looking for an extra 10, 12k across the board here. 6 months is about all Rangnick may have, so that remains to be seen, but that could be an issue for him for sure here.
I think it will be an issue. I absolutely think it will be an issue, because if you've not, the old-fashioned way of saying it, if you've not got it in the tank, you go to look at that tank and it's empty. That tank should have been filled up and should have been continually filled up over the years. And there's players, and they don't have to be older players, there's younger players that haven't had enough in the tank, and when they try to up that intensity, they fail. There are quite a few players I've watched like that try to up it, and they can't do it because they've got through in pure, adrenaline. And people think I'm biased pro Chelsea. I have to say I think that's been, remember, Eden Hazard, one of the best players you'll ever see. But when he gets an injury, then tries to come back for it, wasn't in the tank because he never really worked that hard. And you suffer for it in the end. And there's lots of players around there, you see that. So ask them to go and halfway through the season to get that tank full again very, very quickly. It's going to be very hard for them. So that's why the temptation will be, if you can get Greenwood fit, if you can get Rashford's head right, and that sort of youthful attitude, you'll have it there. It's naturally there, and they should be able to do it. And there will be a temptation to use that. I honestly think it would be desperate to get Cavani back. I think Cavani is the perfect lead man for that. And then if he goes and chases around and closes down, then other people can come behind him. Again at the game, because I was kind of high up in the stand, at the start of the game, there was a couple of half attempts at closing down by Manchester United. It was actually bordering on laughable.
Yeah.
It was that.
They throw a few of those in every match.
And honestly, you just look at it and you go, oh no, don't do that. Yeah. You really do. There's no way. You can do that against a really average team, and maybe some of the teams have come up against in the Champions League now and again, they'll be able to do that. In the group stages, you can't do that.
Yeah.
They'll destroy you.
Look, I'm not saying I could orchestrate an elite press, but I can sure as hell spot a rubbish one. And they throw it in. They throw it in routinely.
We've watched it so often now. We know when it's done well, how it's done well.
Yeah.
But we've often said when you don't do it well, and if that's the main point of your game, so give him his due. Carrick looks at it and thinks, well, okay, they're not going to be able to do that. Let's try the old plan, the one they tried, last season when they were a breaking team, when everyone else had more possession than them. And it kind of worked for them, but come on up. It was luck more than design.
Yeah.
Chelsea deserved to win that game. They didn't win that game, and Manchester United, because had they lost that game, which they could have in that last moment from Rudiger, they'd be bottom half today. They'd be bottom half of the table, which is unbelievable.
Yeah. So a few other things. Leicester trying to regather their form. They beat Watford 3-1. Maddison scored, and by the way, knew all his stats in the post-match interview, which I thought was interesting. 3 goals, 4 assists in his last 5, he was pointing out to the interviewer. But Jamie Vardy had by his standards, a mini goal drought, scored twice, which means for goals scored in the Premier League after the age of 30, he's joint top of the pile. He's on 93 goals, level with Ian Wright. Alan Shearer, bizarrely not on top of one of these lists, on 83. So, I mean, this guy still got into the Premier League, as we know, aged 27, and is still doing it now, aged 34. The thing which just, when you're watching Match of the Day and you kind of see matches back to back to back to back, man, his movement is so good. He just creates angles at every turn, and he's defenders half twisting and turning, don't like where he is, and a nuisance to play against. Why is his? I'm not saying he's so far ahead of the rest in any great respect, but I mean, his movement, is it possible to learn that? Because there just seems to be like an alertness about him. He reacts to every single moment, and he makes a run here and a run there, and you don't see it necessarily from every striker. It must be, to some degree, instinctive. Or could Jamie Vardy teach a championship player how to do it over the course of 4 or 5 months?
It's kind of, I don't know, you can't teach it to that level. I think you have to have some of that in it. You can teach some of the, I was going to say basics, but some of the nuances of it. And you see, I mean, all the players are coached on how to do those types of movement, but he's doing it all the time. He's perpetual energy. He never switches off. We see on Match of the Day, you see the 2 goals. I mean, the goal where he gets the toe pop, I mean, I'm looking at that going through, I'm thinking, your second favourite, mate. You'll never get, you've scored.
Yeah.
You think, no, you can't get to that. You were second favourite. But when he gets there, having not only the movement, but see to have the balance when you get there. For me, that's the tricky bit. Well, it was for me the tricky bit. Because you get there and you understand that, all right, I've got in the right position, but you better be correctly balanced. You better get your body in the right position. You better have the view of where the goalie is, where the ball is, where the movement is. You better be able to do that totally naturally. And there's so few can do it. I mean, even his header goal. I mean, he knew what he was doing there. Many can actually do that. Very, very few. So some of it, yeah, you can work on. But absolutely, innately phenomenal mover. And when you see those guys doing it, you can almost smile because, I mean, I'm fortunate I worked with a few. I mean, I mentioned to you before, Aldridge was unbelievable at it. He really was. And I played against Rush and people like that who were just outstanding at it. Absolutely ridiculously good at it. It helps if you're very, very quick. Naturally, that gives you that little bit on top of it. But I've watched these guys, and as soon as I see them, you hit me, I'm away. There's the boy Furuhashi up at Celtic just now. I promise you, he's the same.
Yeah.
He moves exactly the same way. And it's frightening if you're a defender, because classically, it is a cliche. You only have to turn off for a second. But it's less than a second with them. Now, he's phenomenal just now, and every time you think, all right, well, that's it. Maybe the legs have caught up with him. And he's just back again. I think he is utterly brilliant. And I'm a total fan and getting more of a fan of him as years go by. And do you know the other thing is, which really makes me like him, doesn't roll about and dive too much anymore. You know, he used to throw himself about a little bit. He's less of that now. He's just so desperate to get in there. So I'm loving everything he's doing just now. And I think Brendan needed him to turn up, and he's turned up.
Yeah. Brentford 1, Everton 0. This leaves Everton winless in 7. They have scored just 4 goals in their last 7 games, which is bottom of the Premier League. Very low in shots as well. Even in possession terms, 39%. So 17th worst for possession in the league over just the last 7 games, admittedly. Their fixtures upcoming: Liverpool, Arsenal, away to Crystal Palace, and then Stamford Bridge. So this is tricky. And Richarlison was suspended. So take the Man City game. They had a few back for the Brentford game, but Richarlison was certainly suspended for the Brentford game. Man City, their injury list was Doucouré, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Yerry Mina, Andre Gomez, Tom Davies, and they lost Demarai Gray after 20 minutes. So the injuries are a factor here. But Rafa's kind of quickly moving towards, not crisis point, but I mean, that fixture list, as ugly as that is for him, this has crisis point by Christmas unless things change. What's happened here?
Well, number one, I was thinking how bad it was, and obviously I talked to a lot of Everton fans regularly, and they're devastated by it because they can't see a way out of it other than, as you say, getting every single player back fit. The squad wasn't deep enough. It was miles away from being deep enough, and it just needed 2 or 3 players that are important to get injured. And you know what? It happens to be Dominic Calvert-Lewin. It happens to be Richarlison. You know, the people that maybe score a goal for you that have not really got going this season or haven't been available this season. But if you took maybe a couple of the centre-backs, I mean, take Godfrey out of the team, and I'd be scared to death for them as well. They're miles away from having a big enough squad at the moment, and they've lost important players. So that's number one. It looks as if the confidence is beginning to go down a little bit. I mean, watch bits of the game. I didn't watch all of that game. And there were moments of the game where they actually didn't look too bad. But I agree, it's frightening. And I was beside an influencer at the end of the game, and he goes, Rafa being sacked is trending. Apparently that's quite a big thing. It was trending. So there is no doubt he's under a huge amount of pressure. But the question I asked him at that point in time, and I would ask anyone, so who are you going to get then?
Yeah.
Who are you going to get that's better? Rafa's just in the door. He's not had a chance to add anything really of, you know, his personnel. The problem he's got is that this is one of the worst windows ever coming up. If he reaches the window and he wants to add to that squad, which he will damn well need to add to that squad, who are you up against trying to get players? Newcastle will be splashing the cash all over the place. Wouldn't be surprised if United are diving into that market as well. There's a lot of teams that have got much more money than Everton that have got a lot more kudos at the moment than Everton. And, you know, Everton fans are going, what, Newcastle more than us? Well, I'm talking about the new Newcastle. What Newcastle are going to become.
Do you know, on Newcastle, because I know you see them a little bit just for geographical
I'm going tomorrow,
reasons. Yeah. So they're beaten by Arsenal. Arsenal are on the up. There's no great shame in that. Eddie Howe's getting his feet under the table. They concede a bunch of goals. Just looking at the table already. So they're 6 points from safety. And it's not just about the points, it's who's above them. Leeds 12. There's a question mark over Leeds. Leeds 12. Watford 13 with Ranieri at the helm. You think they might do okay. Then Southampton 14 aren't going down. Everton 15, I think we can say, aren't going down. So Newcastle really are going to have to splash the cash here in January, aren't they?
You know, is it 6 points?
6 point gap to Leeds, yeah.
but they've only got 6 points.
Yeah. So it's not nothing.
That's nightmarish. That is absolutely nightmarish. And certainly there's been a lift in the effort levels, and there looks like a tiny bit more organisation about them at the moment. But then tomorrow night, they need to win tomorrow night. It looks a wee bit different if they can get the result against Norwich. They're on 9 points, a level with Burnley and with Norwich at that point in time. Norwich have had a wee uptick themselves. So, others are improving as well around them. At the moment, it's a horrible league to be at the bottom of and have a bad start, because there's not that many really bad teams anymore. It just goes so far down. We've talked about it before, but I'm looking at, if Watford can go and hammer Manchester United, okay, not a great Man United, but they hammered them. You're thinking there's not going to be some easy points there that you can pick up and be comfortable with. So, yeah, they've got an incredibly tough one. It's whether they think, will we throw daft amounts of money after this and then still possibly go down and then have to redo it again and get rid of all these people. A, have they got the money to do it? Yes. B, will they be allowed to with financial fair play? Bigger question.
Yes.
It's a really,
yes,
really...
they will be. Of course they will be.
I know, they will do. They'll do anything to do it. But as I say, if it's a player that's worth 25 million, they're going to have to pay 50.
Is that what you think it will be? Yeah.
Yeah, they absolutely. This is the way it goes.
Double.
100%. I've been there in a much, much smaller way. An owner came in the club and was telling everybody how wealthy he was, and I was going, that's the last thing you tell anybody, how minted you are, or how well off, how well your company's done, or how much money's behind you. And they couldn't hide it. Obviously, they couldn't hide it. But at the moment, wherever they go on the planet, the excess that they're getting on top of that one is going to be stunning. Of course, if they don't want to pay it and they want to try and get market values, they won't get them because, Aston Villa will be looking for players, as I say, Everton will looking for players. Everyone's looking for players just now. This could be, there's been so many damp squibs over the years for the January transfer window. This one won't be. This one will be great.
I know Aston Villa play Man City this week, so I want to talk to you about Steven Gerrard next week with a bit more of a sample size of what he's about. So, Pat and Nevin, enjoy the trip to Newcastle. I presume the food in the press area has improved since the Mike Ashley days.
But remember, they've not been allowed to give food for a long time, for a couple of years now. But they started it the other week there, the last time I was down. And yeah, it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. This is how they're going to buy the journalists.
Well, I'll tell you what, they often say a way to a man's heart, but a way to a journalist's heart, fine well, that's one of the ways.
Listen, a second digestive in there, anyone's. Enjoy the game tomorrow. Thanks, Emil. Cheers. Pat Nevin there, and our football coverage is brought to you by Sky. You can watch every live Premier League game this Christmas on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Football on Off the Ball
with Sky. Watch Premier League, Women's Super League, EFL, Scottish Premiership and much more live on Sky Sports.